The Commanders' attempt to stop the two-game losing streak brings us to Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri, where the return of star receivers are critical, but the status of Daron Payne's toe might be even more important. All of that and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, right here with you 5 days a week. And you can also find me writing about the Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. You can follow me on X at DHarrison82 or on Instagram at DHarrison_82, trying to get better at posting things there, videos and shorts and all kinds of fun stuff there as well. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view. A special thank you goes out to all of the everydayers, those of you who come through for every single episode. Special thank you goes out to you for coming through yet again for today's, in which we are going to get to some pregame betting angles. We're going to break down the three matchups that are going to decide this game. But first, we're going to get to the news you need to know, the final status report for the Washington Commanders road game against Kansas City Chiefs, Monday Night Football of Week 8. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That promo code has changed because the NBA season getting kicked off. So in celebration of that, Locked On NBA, the new promo code there. So pay attention to that. It's our final look. We do this every week. Before every game, we take one last look at the matchup, try to figure out where the Washington Commanders can go right, where they might go wrong, and the pieces of the equation that are the most important. And right now we got to look at the medicals, right? We got to look at the game status report. Of course, the biggest news of the week, Jayden Daniels out for this game. We've known that for a few days now. Marcus Mariota will be in. However, on Friday, or actually on Saturday, which was our new Friday for this week, everything pushed to the right with the game being on Monday. Terry McLaurin officially active for this game. Deebo Samuel officially active for this game. Terry McLaurin, of course, coming back for the first time since week 3 when he suffered that quad injury against the Las Vegas Raiders. Deebo Samuel only missed the 1 week, the loss against the Dallas Cowboys with the heel injury that he suffered against the Atlanta Falcons. But we kind of saw that injury progress deeper and deeper and deeper until he just kind of wasn't, really the Deebo that he needed to be for this team against the Chicago Bears, ultimately leading to his being inactive against the Dallas Cowboys. Terry McLaurin spoke for the first time with us since that week 3 injury, talked about the quote-unquote challenging stretch that he's gone through, but also said, quote, "I haven't taken time to really feel sorry for myself. I'm just looking forward to putting my best foot forward this weekend and really helping this team try to get a win," end quote. Now, I know some people kind of, point out they saw videos of Terry's interview, some of the beat reporters cutting it, some of the TV stations cutting parts of it and putting it out there, and kind of felt like Terry maybe didn't have that same kind of joy to him, that same kind of, happiness in his interview and all that stuff. And, I suppose potentially some of that was there, sure. But I wouldn't take it, to mean anything too far, one way or another. Some people are kind of like, maybe it means Terry's actually not happy still being with the team and all this stuff. I think it's just been tough. You know what I mean? And listen, we've all been in positions where we make kind of bold statements, whether it be about ourselves or about other people or situations, right? And so for a guy to say, like, not everybody who turns 30 gets hurt and not everybody has a drop off in production, why can't I be different, to then get hurt in week 3 and have to miss multiple weeks, like that's frustrating. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's necessarily anything that's going to impact the play on the field, I should say. Now, how much Terry plays on Monday night against Kansas City Chiefs, I think that is a totally separate, situation. So if he doesn't play as much, or if he doesn't look like the full-blown Terry that you're used to seeing, I wouldn't necessarily connect the two dots, right? Deebo also spoke. He's also back active again. Deebo confirmed that the heel is quote-unquote not an issue and that he is quote-unquote ready to rock out. So that's good news for Deebo, for the Commanders, for Marcus Mariota, and of course for you all as fans and us as media who want to see a good football game on Monday night as much as you do. Coach Dan Quinn confirmed the news Saturday. So, quote, "Terry and Deebo both have had a good week, and man, we're excited to get them back on the field," end quote. Cliff Kingsbury talking about the importance of both men this week, saying, quote, "There's certain coverages that teams aren't willing to play when you have guys like that on the field," end quote. And I think that is a big, big factor. And so that's why I think even having number 17 on the field even if he's not maybe the 100% Terry McLaurin that you've all grown to love and appreciate and all that stuff. Just being on the field forces teams to do certain things and forces teams to not be able to do certain things, which is going to open up things for Zach Ertz over the middle, is going to open up the shorter routes for Deebo, et cetera, et cetera. Bill as a running back, all those things as well. So with that, so good news there, obviously, but with Jayden Daniels out, Marcus Mariota in, Jayden nursing that hamstring. I've been asked, in several radio appearances, I've been asked by insiders, how long is Jayden going to be out for? I wish I could tell you an exact answer. Honestly, my best answer is expect him or hope that he's back for Detroit. And that way, if he's back for Seattle, we'll all be happily surprised together. And as long as he's out there for Detroit, I think, worst case scenario is out there for Miami in Spain. But I think Detroit is just kind of the safest benchmark to look for. But for Marcus Mariota, he's making his third start here for the Commanders this season. 1-1 in his previous two starts. Win at home over the Las Vegas Raiders. A loss on the road to the Atlanta Falcons. And we've seen the extremes from Marcus this season. He's gotten A's in our grades for earlier performance. He got an F in his relief appearance against the Dallas Cowboys. But even, Cliff Kingsbury kind of coming out and saying, look, coming into a really bad situation, just trying to make a play. You don't really hold too much of what happened in Dallas against Marcus. At least I don't. And it doesn't sound like the coaching staff does. And so I would advise, take it or leave it, that you don't either. Kingsbury on Marcus Mariota, praising his preparation as a veteran, quote, his command of the offense, the way he leads has been really good. So not much will change, end quote. And not much changed the last time that Marcus Mariota had to start a couple of games in place of Jayden Daniels nursing an injury. The biggest thing that changes is stylistically the way that Marcus quarterbacks versus the way that Jayden quarterbacks. Marcus said himself, quote, we have the right guys in the locker room. We have the guys in here in there to climb out of it, end quote, referring to, of course, the losing streak. And Marcus would love nothing more than to come into Kansas City, get a win. There's been some conversation about Marcus played a playoff game with the Tennessee Titans and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. It's good for a nostalgia thing, right? It really has zero bearing on what happens Monday night. But Chiefs defense coordinator Steve Spagnuolo certainly not sleeping on Marcus Mariota. He said in a press conference earlier this week, quote, he started games. He knows how to operate. He's athletic. When the backup quarterback comes in, everybody else raises their level, end quote. And I love that Spags said that because every day you're going to remember, we've had this conversation about how some quarterbacks elevate the guys around them and some guys come in and the players around them elevate, right? And they're two different things. Jayden Daniels certainly elevates the play of guys around him with his natural ability and his leadership and the spark that he brings and all that kind of stuff. But when Marcus Mariota comes in, it just seems like some of the guys around him on the offense, they just play a little bit better because it's kind of this understanding that the backup quarterback is in. We have to be better. And so that, I think, is what Spags is talking about. And I think it's a great point, obviously, because I've already made the point. So I just love when an NFL defensive coordinator essentially comes out and says, David Harrison, Locked On Commanders, we're on the right track, right? So looking forward to that. Hopefully that, continues. Hopefully that rings true. Tight end Colson Yankoff, hamstring injury on Saturday, ruled out for the game. That was kind of a sudden, look, I'm not going to sit here and try to make it into like the most major, injury development of the week. But Colson is a very important part of kickoff coverage, kickoff returns, things like that. And this kickoff return especially has been very, very effective for the Washington Commanders. So it's not insignificant, okay? It's not Jayden Daniels, right? It's not, should Terry miss another week, all that kind of stuff. But it's not insignificant either. D-line and kicker concerns. So defensive tackle Daron Payne, no practice all week long, questionable tag coming into the game. As far as I know, he traveled to Kansas City with the team, which means that he has a good chance of playing. Now, I don't have that confirmed, so I want to be grain of salt there, but I don't have to confirm that he isn't traveling or didn't travel with the team, I should say. DQ said, quote, he's dealing with a toe that's bothering him. I'll know more over the next day and a half. And, again, he wasn't, quote unquote, ruled out by Sunday afternoon arriving to Kansas City. Losing Daron Payne would be huge. He had a 90.8 grade against the Dallas Cowboys, got that safety. So, even though the team overall didn't do well, Daron certainly was part of it. Part of the team that did really well on an individual standpoint. Losing him even for 1 week after losing Dorrance Armstrong would be absolutely detrimental to this team. So they absolutely need Daron Payne out there if they can. And, of course, kicker Matt Gay also popped up on the injury report with a questionable status back injury. John Keim of ESPN says that he did travel. Matt Gay did travel with the team. I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't bothered to confirm that information. I just trust that John Keim is not going to be a liar. So Take it for what it's worth. But Matt Gay traveling, no kicker signed on Sunday. So all signs point to Matt Gay being available. Or maybe DQ is going to make him inactive and just say, F it, no field goals, no extra points. We're just going all out against Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think that's what's going to happen. On the Chiefs side, they're not without their own issues. Starting left tackle Josh Simmons, rookie offensive lineman out of Ohio State, is out for this game. He's been out for some time with a personal matter. The Chiefs say it's not a negative thing. It's just something he's got to take care of. He continues to be out and away from the team. Pro Bowl right guard Trey Smith suffered a back injury in the Chiefs' win over the Las Vegas Raiders last week. He is doubtful for this game. The expectation is that Jalen Moore will start at left tackle. Mike Caliendo will start at right guard. So that is a vulnerability for this Washington Commanders defense that they absolutely need to exploit. So that's the health report. Now let's look at how that health and the data is going to impact Monday night's game. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Prize Picks. You and I, we make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right in those decisions can not only feel good, it can get you paid. So don't miss on any of the excitement of any of the sports seasons, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, or both. There's no better time than now to jump in on the action. And if you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is not only fun, but it's the simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections. And if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup. And then you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia, and Virginia, because I play all the time and I live in Virginia. I'm looking at the board on Monday Night Football. We just discussed how Jayden Daniels is out. Marcus Mariota is starting with Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel back. I'm definitely looking at Terry McLaurin. More and less on his receiving yards. Deebo Samuel, more and less on his reception total. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup with Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you in part by Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything, and we've heard them all before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. We just spent all that first segment talking about injuries and key players being out. The Commanders can't make excuses. They have to find ways to perform. You just connect in real life. The same thing applies, right? You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. And if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly to your door. The process is fast, it's simple, and it's private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. So visit Rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL to get 15% off your order. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNFL so they know we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. Testing the trenches is going to be a big part of the Washington Commanders' strategy for getting an upset win over the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 8, getting back in the win column, getting back to 500, all those things, returning home for a back-to-back game, Seattle Seahawks, Detroit Lions. Obviously, we'll talk about that here in the coming weeks. In this segment, we're going to talk about the matchups that are going to matter for this game, for the Washington Commanders to try to get that upset win. Matchup number 1, and again, they could end up being important in the real game in any variety of order. But the first one we're going to talk about is that Washington Commanders number 2 rush offense against Kansas City's vulnerable edge. And I know. We talk about this all the time. And then we come in week after week after week after week, and they're ranked high, but it just seems like the run game isn't as effective as it potentially could be. But at the end of the day, you still need this Washington Commanders team, especially this offense, to lean on its strength as much as possible. Number 2 ranked rushing attack in the National Football League through 7 weeks, 148.9 yards per game. Again, it's one of their biggest advantages. They also lead the NFL in explosive runs, 10-plus yard runs. They have 28 of them this season. So clearly that is the catalyst to getting things going. What has killed it? Well, what has killed it has been penalties. But the Chiefs' run defense is going to have something to say about it as well on Monday night. 15th overall. Kansas City's Nick Bolton knows the challenge. He said, quote, "The running backs are doing great this year. It's going to be a challenge for us up front. We need to stop the run early," end quote. So look for the Chiefs to be aggressive. However, again, having Terry McLaurin, having Deebo Samuel healthy, it prevents them from being overly aggressive, or it's going to give opportunities for Marcus Mariota to take advantage of that aggressiveness. And we know Cliff Kingsbury loves him some screens. That's how you can take advantage of some really aggressive defenses. So here's a key tendency here. The Kansas City Chiefs are dead last at stopping runs off their right end. They are worse in the NFL. The offense's left-hand side, Laramie Tunsil, Chris Paul, giving up 8.2 yards per carry to that side. Washington's offense, on the other hand, has been very, very effective running to the right side, 8.37 yards per attempt off the tackle and 7 yards per attempt off the right end. So expect Kingsbury to test that significantly early on. Again, I'm with a lot of you. I still want to see them using Chris Rodriguez up the middle, do some halfback duo, double team Chris Jones, be powerful, drop the sledgehammer on him, use Chris Rodriguez to set the tone, and then hit those edges with Chris a little bit as well, but also with, of course, Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt and then Jeremy McNichols getting involved as a veteran. Matchup number 2, Washington Commanders defensive line against that Kansas City offensive line. We just talked about the injuries. We just talked about the 2 key players that they're going to be without. Now, they have been without Josh Simmons, left tackle, for some time now, so that's really nothing new for them. So they've had time to adapt to that. But missing that right guard, that all-pro caliber right guard is significant, right? So this is the kind of the game within the game. Talk about taking your eyes off the ball, look at the trenches. The Washington defensive line has to do damage here, not just by themselves, certainly in some blitzes as well. Joe Witt Jr. made sure to point out to us this week that his team is very high up there in blitz rate. They're currently 8th in blitz percentage, 30% of the time they're blitzing, which is pretty high in the National Football League. Kansas City, of course, they still have their own guys. They still have their own ability to impact the trench warfare. Flipping to the other side of things, Chris Jones is going to go up against that Washington Commanders offensive line and look to fire their own salvos in the battle of the trenches as well. Andrew Wiley told me that Chris Jones is, quote unquote, a top 3 defensive interior lineman. Nick Allegretti also added that he's, quote, very intelligent, has the freedom to make his own decisions, end quote. Both Wiley and Allegretti, teammates of Chris Jones during their time with the Kansas City Chiefs as well. So the plan is for on the defensive side of things for Joe Witt Jr., figure out how to get pressure without Dorrance Armstrong Jr. Dorrance Armstrong was such a massive chunk of the pressure that this Commanders team was developing. They've got to go out there and find a better way. Joe Witt Jr. talked about the focus this week being to, quote unquote, speed up the play, paring things down on the defense to eliminate hesitation. That's certainly going to help a lot. This is critical, especially if Daron Payne can't play or if he's even limited by that toe injury. It's kind of like a backup game, right? Like which backups are going to step up the most between the Washington Commanders and the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And then, of course, the Commanders' O-line against Chris Jones and his running mates have to hold up as well to win the battle of the trenches. The final matchup we're going to talk about here, it's the Commanders versus the Commanders. Turnovers, and then, of course, Patrick Mahomes. We haven't even really talked about Patrick Mahomes, but clearly he's a major part of this game. This game can be lost before it even really gets competitive due to ball security. It's a massive advantage for Kansas City. Washington is tied for 27th in turnover margin, -5. Kansas City might as well, or by the way, tied for 5th, +5. So we're talking about a 10 turnover differential so far this season. So every game, turnovers are important. But in this game, it's significantly important. Cliff Kingsbury was blunt about it, quote, the biggest deal to me is just the turnover margin has been really bad. In this league, that's the number one indicator of success, end quote. And I'll tell you, like the Commanders have given up the ball, especially in the last 3 weeks. They've done more of it than they did before. But overall, this is a defensive problem. And I think that right there is probably the closest you're ever going to hear Cliff Kingsbury come to calling out Joe Witt Jr.'s side of the ball. And then we all know that the defense is not getting near as many turnovers as they need to. And the offense certainly isn't terrible. They could do better, certainly, but they are not terrible at giving the ball away. The Patrick Mahomes factor, obviously, you can't give Patrick Mahomes extra possessions. He's going to do damage with the possessions that he has already. He needs only 34 passing yards in this game to join Peyton Manning as the only players with 40,000 plus total yards in their first 9 seasons, including the postseason. So he's clearly going to do that. He's also in the position to tie Dan Marino for the most 3 touchdown games in a player's first 9 seasons. That would be 46 of them each. Clearly, the Commanders do not want to be a part of that historic note, right? Joe Witt Jr. called Patrick Mahomes, quote, one of the best quarterbacks since I've been in the league. He can make every throw off every platform, end quote. So giving him short fields with offensive takeaway or turnovers, giveaways is absolutely out of the question. So the matchups are clear. How does it translate to the odds, the stats, and where can you maybe make a little bit of money off of the game coming up Monday night? That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Game Time. The NFL season is rolling, and honestly, There's nothing better than helping the in-stadium surrounded or being in stadium surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. In the press box, we're not allowed to cheer, but I love being in the press boxes that are kind of in there with the fans. Northwest Stadium, the press box is pushed right up against the seats, so there's fans right in front of us. Sometimes you guys turn around, you say hi, you cheer in our faces and things like that while we're taking our notes and being all golf clap and being very serious and all that stuff. But it's a lot of fun being around you guys. So between the queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, of course, it can be frustrating trying to get tickets. That's why you need to use Game Time. Whenever I need to go to an event that I'm not working, I use Game Time to get my tickets. I got my first trip to Yankee Stadium, my first trip to Fenway this year. Both of them, I used Game Time for those trips. Took my wife with me. You got zone deals. You can pick the section, and Game Time will pick the seats. All kinds of things. So download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're about to get into betting angles for this Commanders-Chiefs game, and FanDuel is the place to go for that as well. We just broke down how Washington's number 2 ranked rushing attack can help impact the Chiefs defense, and it's 32nd against the rush to the right end. Even if you missed the start of the game, you can see Crosby-Merritt gashing them early. FanDuel has live bets from everything you need, from who will score in the fourth quarter to who's going to make a comeback, who's going to win the game. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay, which everydayers know that I love, for a shot at a bigger payout. It just keeps every game a little bit more exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Wrapping up our final episode before kickoff Monday Night Football. Washington Commanders visiting the Kansas City Chiefs. We are here in my luxurious hotel room in Kansas City, Missouri. And let's talk about some odds. Now, every week I tell you that these odds are all from FanDuel, which they are still this week. And I tell you that I'm putting my own money on these. I bet responsibly. I don't bet my whole mortgage. I would like for you to also bet responsibly, whether you're using my bets or you're using your own. Just be responsible with it, right? It's supposed to be fun. And nobody has fun potentially losing their rent check or whatever it is, right? However, I do have to be completely transparent. Always want to be honest with you guys. I am not putting any money on these bets this week. Why? Because I did not know that in Missouri you cannot use FanDuel, and I did not place my bets before I left Virginia. These are the bets I planned to bet on, just for the record. But unfortunately, because of that gaffe on my parts, I am not putting money on these. So just full transparency. But these are still the bets. Again, I put them together because I planned on betting them. Pulled up the app. Turns out Missouri, you're not allowed to bet. Number one, the safest bet, Zach Ertz over 3.5 receptions. That's the safest bet for me. I think Marcus Mariota is going to face a lot of blitzes from Spags, the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going to need a reliable check down. I think Zach Ertz can be that guy. He's the team leader in receiving touchdowns with 4 of them. He's also chasing history. 1 10-catch game. He'll pass Jason Witten for third most 10-catch games all time by a tight end. He will be targeting this game. The over-under, again, 3.5 catches. I think you take the over on that. That is my safest bet. The safe bet, Washington Commanders plus 11.5. Look, I know the Commanders have not been good on defense, but the offense has actually been fairly decent considering everything they're going up against, including injuries. Now you got Terry back. Now you got Deebo back. I think they're going to be able to put some points up, even against the Kansas City Chiefs defense, which is not weak, okay? But I think that the 11.5-point spread is very, very big. It reminds me of like the 25-point spread you see in college football sometimes. So to me, that's enough points. I mean, basically, if the Commanders lose by less than 12 or win, then you are going to win that bet. The risky bet, this is our same-game parlay. Crosby-Merritt, Washington Commanders running back, 50-plus rushing yards. Marcus Mariota, 25-plus rushing yards. And Deebo Samuel, 50-plus receiving yards. Stack all of those 3, and I think that you're going to get an opportunity to make some money here. They're going to lean on that rushing attack. And then, again, having that space to operate a little bit, I think Deebo is going to get some opportunities as well. The riskier bet, Washington's first drive result being an offensive touchdown. They've only done that once this year, which is what makes this a little bit riskier. But if Cliff Kingsbury comes out a little bit in his bag, if he gets a little bit loose with some of the weapons that he's got back, and the Kansas City Chiefs defense just kind of doesn't know. I mean, they haven't really gotten to see a lot of Commanders football this year with Deebo and Terry on the field together, let alone Deebo, Terry, and Marcus on the field together. So I do expect to to have that there. Well, I expect it a little bit. It's the risky bet, right? The riskiest of them all. Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt to score 2+ touchdowns. This is any touchdown, not just rushing, is rushing and or receiving. That is my riskiest bet of them all, but the payout is pretty nice if he does it. So Coach Quinn has been preaching finding their identity. Flat admitted that he doesn't know his team's identity right now, which is a terrifying place for a coach to be in, terrifying place for a team to be in. I'll tell you right now, getting a win or being incredibly competitive against a Super Bowl contender like the Kansas City Chiefs can help you find that identity in a hurry. So we're here to see if the Commanders can do exactly that. That's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we will be reacting to everything that goes down on Monday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. In the meantime, we're going to have a live Zoom conference. I'm going to call my Locked On Commanders insiders from Arrowhead Stadium. We'll have a nice video conversation. If I can get in a position, you guys will get to see the players and coaches arrive for the game and even more. So if you want to be a part of that, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and become a Locked On Commanders insider today. For your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's show. Twice a day, you get all kinds of national NFL insight. Every dayers, I see you. I appreciate you every day. And again, a special thank you goes out to you for coming through yet again today. For everybody, until next time, please stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.